Upon turning professional in 1950 to 1951, Armstrong was assigned to Toronto's American Hockey League (AHL) affiliate, the Pittsburgh Hornets. In 71 games for Pittsburgh, he recorded 15 goals and 48 points. Despite being hampered by hand and wrist injuries suffered in fights, Armstrong was the AHL's leading goal scorer and stood second in points by mid-season in 1951 to 52. He was recalled to Toronto during the season and scored his first NHL goal against goaltender Jerry McNeil of the Montreal Canadiens. It was the first goal ever scored by a player with native heritage. He finished the season with 3 goals and 3 assists in 20 games with Toronto. Though he missed the start of the 1952-53 season due to a separated shoulder, Armstrong earned a permanent spot on the Maple Leafs roster. He quietly established himself as an important contributor for Toronto by recording 25 points that season, then scoring 32 points the following season and 28 in 1954-55. A 48-point season in 1955-56 was second on the team to Todd Sloan's 66. Armstrong then led the Maple Leafs in scoring with 44 points in 1956-1957, despite missing 14 of his team's games. He was named to play in the NHL All-Star Game in both seasons. They were the first 2 of 7 he ultimately played. Armstrong poses for a studio shot in his Maple Leafs uniform. His sweater features a C patch, denoting he was captain of his team. Armstrong was named captain of the Toronto Maple Leafs during the 1957-58 season. The Maple Leafs named Armstrong the team's captain in 1957-58, as he succeeded Ted Kennedy and Jim Thompson, who served as co-captains the season before. He finished 4th in team scoring with 42 points, then played his 3rd All-Star game during the 1958-59 season. He recorded 4 assists in the playoffs as the Maple Leafs reached the 1959 Stanley Cup Final, but lost to the Montreal Canadiens. With 51 points in 1959-1960, Armstrong finished 1 behind Bob Pulford for the team lead. Toronto again reached the Stanley Cup Final, where they were again eliminated by Montreal. The Maple Leafs finally reached the NHL's peak 2 seasons later. Armstrong set a career high with 53 points in the 1961-62 regular season, then added 12 points in 12 playoff games for Toronto. He started the play that resulted in the Stanley Cup clinching goal, rushing the puck up the ice before passing to Tim Horton, who then passed to goal scorer Dick Duff, that capped off a 2-1 victory in the 6th and deciding game of the series against the Chicago Blackhawks. As Maple Leafs captain, Armstrong was presented the trophy by league president Clarence Campbell. It was the first of 3 consecutive championships for Toronto, as the Maple Leafs of 1962 to 1964 became the 4th dynasty in NHL history. Individually, Armstrong scored 21, 19, and 20 goals over the 3 seasons, and by virtue of the NHL's All-Star Game format of the time, that had the defending champion play the All-Stars of the remaining teams, appeared in his 4th, 5th, and 6th All-Star games. Early in the 1963-64 season, on December 1st, 1963, Armstrong scored his 200th career NHL goal. A 37-point season followed in 1964-65, then 51 points in the 1965-66 season. By 1966-67, Armstrong led an aging Maple Leafs team that entered the playoffs as an underdog against a dominant Chicago team. The Maple Leafs nonetheless eliminated the Blackhawks in 6 games to set up the 1967 Stanley Cup Final against Montreal. The Canadiens were so confident of victory that a display area for the Stanley Cup had been set up at the Quebec Pavilion at Expo 67 prior to the series' start. The Maple Leafs dashed Montreal's hopes by winning the championship in 6 games. Armstrong scored the final goal of the series in a 3-1 victory in the deciding contest. It was also the last goal scored in the NHL's original 6 era, as the league was set to double in size to 12 teams for the 1967-68 season. Armstrong poses for a photographer while wearing his full Maple Leafs uniform. Armstrong with the Maple Leafs during the 1970-71 season. He retired at the end of that season. Armstrong announced his intention to retire as a player following the championship, but changed his mind and returned for another season. The Maple Leafs placed him on their protected list for the 1967 expansion draft, and he remained with Toronto. He played in his 7th All-Star game in 1968, and finished the season with 34 points. Retiring the following season, before changing his mind, became an annual event for Armstrong, as he announced his intention to leave the game in 5 straight years. He remained a consistent scorer for Toronto, recording 27, 28, and 25 points in his following 3 seasons. He finally ended his playing career after the 1970-71 season to take an office position in the Maple Leafs. And also, he finished his career with 296 goals, 4 goals away from obtaining 300. At the time of his retirement, Armstrong was second to Dick Clapper for the longest tenure as a team captain in NHL history.
You couldn't call the New York Rangers of the 1950s and early 60s an elite hockey club, but they had a few elite players. One was extra special, regularly mentioned alongside Gordie Howe, Maurice Richard, Doug Harvey and Jean Beliveau, the NHL's superstars of the day. On top of his exceptional talent, he was a tough but clean player, a modest man of great integrity, a leader, and something of a matinee idol. That man was Andy Bathgate. Those qualities alone should have created a lasting reputation. But Bathgate's renown has not resonated as loudly through the years compared to that of those other greats, whose teams often contended for or won the Stanley Cup. Yet when his NHL career ended in 1971, Bathgate ranked among the all-time scoring leaders in the league. For 8 consecutive seasons he finished among the top 4 scorers in the NHL, and in a 9th season, he was 5th. When Bathgate is remembered today, however, it is more because his backhand shot in 1959 sliced open Jacques Plante's face, leading the Montreal Canadiens goaltender to become the first NHL goalie in history to wear a mask on a regular basis. He would win the Hart Trophy that season, scoring 40 goals, the first Rangers player to do so, with 48 assists. Bathgate had received serious Hart consideration in the 2 previous seasons as well. But what made his 59 selection striking was the Rangers, who had made the Stanley Cup playoffs in the 3 prior seasons and finally looked like a cup contender for a good chunk of the season, blew a 9-point lead with 2 weeks remaining, and missed the postseason when they lost their final game. But that didn't prevent the voters from naming Bathgate the NHL's most valuable player by a substantial margin over Howe. The Rangers' mid-1950s rise followed a dark period when they missed the playoffs 11 out of 13 seasons, coinciding with Bathgate's own rise. At 22 in 1954-55, his first full NHL season, he scored 20 goals, and he got 19 the next season with 47 assists, second most in the league. That was the first of 7 straight seasons when Bathgate led the Rangers in scoring. The Rangers ended a 6-year playoff drought in 1955-56, but lost a 5-game series to the Canadiens. In 1962-63, he scored goals in 10 consecutive games, setting a modern NHL record, but the Rangers' struggles returned and management began making changes. Rumors circulated that Toronto coveted Bathgate, but it was still shocking on February 22, 1964, when New York fans turned on their televisions for the Rangers-Leafs game and were greeted with, "Hello everyone. This is Win Elliott from Maple Leaf Gardens with the biggest news of the National Hockey League season. Andy Bathgate is now a member of the Toronto Maple Leafs." The defending Stanley Cup champs had traded a package of veterans and prospects for him, and Don McKenney, and Bathgate departed as the franchise's all-time leading scorer with 729 points, 272 goals, 457 assists in 719 games. Bathgate scored some big goals that spring for the Maple Leafs, too, including a late one in Game 6 of the 1964 Stanley Cup Final against the Detroit Red Wings, a slap shot from the blue line to tie the score and send it to overtime, and the Cup winner early in Game 7 on a breakaway, beating Terry Sawchuk. Bathgate celebrated with the Cup, but Original Six culture led to some mixed emotions. "I had been brought up as a Ranger, all the way from junior hockey," he told hockey historian Stan Fischler. The majority of the Maple Leafs had developed in Toronto's junior system, so Bathgate said he was something of an outsider. "Even worse, I was an outsider who had taken the place of guys on the Leafs who were pretty close friends of those who were still on the club." With Bathgate slowed by knee injuries the following season, his scoring declined, and he didn't get along with Toronto coach Punch Imlich. He was on the move again, traded to the Red Wings on May 20, 1965. He donned number 21 because his usual number 9 was worn by Howe, and when the Red Wings traded for former Rangers forward Dean Prentice on February 16, 1966, some of the old magic returned. Bathgate scored 5 goals in the 6-game semifinal victory against Chicago, all of them on the power play, setting a record for a playoff series. His 6 postseason goals, also all on the power play, set another record and tied teammate Norm Ullman for the most in that postseason. Bathgate may always be thought of as a Ranger, but above that, his loyalties were to his profession. "Wherever you play, you've got to give it your best," Bathgate said. "The people pay, you're out there for basically 20 minutes every game, and if I can't exert myself for 20 minutes, then I shouldn't be there." Fortunately for hockey, Bathgate was always out there giving his all. Joseph Jean Arthur Beliveau was a Canadian professional ice hockey player. He played parts of 20 seasons with the National Hockey League's Montreal Canadiens from 1950 to 1971. He was nicknamed Le Gros Bill. Beliveau ranks among the 10 greatest NHL players. Beliveau first played professionally in the Quebec Major Hockey League. He made his NHL debut with the Canadiens in 1950 but chose to remain in the QMHL full-time until 1953. By his second season in the NHL, Beliveau was among the top 3 scorers. He was the 4th player to score 500 goals and the 2nd to score 1,000 points. Beliveau won 2 Hart Memorial Trophies, 1956, 1964, and 1 Art Ross Memorial Trophy, 1956, as well as the inaugural Conn Smythe Trophy, 1965. Beliveau was already a star at 15 when spotted by Canadiens general manager Frank Selke, who sought to sign him to an NHLC form. The standard league contract for young players at that time, it would have required Beliveau to join the Canadiens at a set date and agreed-upon salary. When his father balked, Beliveau signed a B form instead, agreeing to play for Montreal should he ever decide to turn pro. Beliveau was called up twice for brief appearances by the Canadiens in 1950-51 and 1952-53, each time playing the minimum number of games that an amateur could play at the professional level. He led the Quebec Senior Hockey League in scoring in 1953. However, he did not appear to show much interest in playing professionally. Finally, Selke got an idea. If the QSHL were somehow turned into a professional league, Beliveau would be a professional as well, and under the terms of the B form he would have to sign with the Habs. At Selke's suggestion, the Canadiens' owners, the Canadian Arena Company, bought the QSHL and converted it from an amateur league to a minor pro league. This forced Beliveau to join the Canadiens for the 1953-54 NHL season, though the Habs owned the NHL rights to all of the league's players in any case. Beliveau retired at the end of the 1970-71 NHL season as his team's all-time leader in points, second all-time in goals and the NHL's all-time leading playoff scorer. He scored 507 goals and had 712 assists for 1,219 points in 1,125 NHL regular season games plus 79 goals and 97 assists for 176 points in 162 playoff games. His jersey number 4 was retired on October 9, 1971. In 1972, he was inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame. He is now the 2nd all-time leading scorer in Canadiens history, behind Guy Lafleur. Only Henry Richard, 1256 games, and Larry Robinson, 1202 games, played more games for the Habs. Bellevau's name appears on the Stanley Cup a record 17 times, including 7 times as an executive for the Canadiens: 1973, 1976, 1977, 1978, 1979, 1986, 1993. In addition to winning the Hart Trophy as league MVP twice, he finished second in the voting a further 4 times and third once. As well, in addition to winning the Art Ross Trophy as the leading scorer once, he finished second twice and third 4 times, illustrating his remarkable long-term consistency. In 1998, the Hockey News named Beliveau the 7th greatest NHL player of all time. Upon his retirement, the Canadiens named Beliveau a vice president and director of public relations. Beliveau was never known as an activist during his playing days. However, he was one of several players who threatened to pull out of the Hall of Fame if disgraced ex-NHLPA executive director Alan Eagleson had been allowed to stay in after being convicted of fraud and embezzlement. He also supported the NHL's position during the 2004-05 NHL lockout, arguing that the players' demands would damage the sport and the league. Leo Boen started the 1951-1952 season playing for the Pittsburgh Hornets of the American Hockey League before being promoted to the Leafs. The franchise had lost hard-hitting blue liner Bill Barilko in the summer of 1951 when he disappeared on a fishing trip, and the Toronto Brass felt Boeven's physical style could help fill that void. Boen made his NHL debut for the Leafs on March 8, 1952. He only played in one other game that season, but featured regularly for the Leafs the following year. Early in the 1954-1955 season, Boen was traded back to the Bruins in exchange for Joe Kluke. Back in Boston, Boen enjoyed his best years as a feared member of the Boston Bruins blue line and helped lead them to 2 Stanley Cup finals in the late 1950s. Boen starred with other Boston defensive stalwarts Alan Stanley, Fernie Flaman, Doug Moens and Bob Armstrong. He remained the anchor of a youthful Bruins defensive core during the difficult reconstructive period of the early 1960s. Boen became captain of the Boston Bruins in 1963. In February 1966, he was traded to the Detroit Red Wings in a 5-player trade. He recounted, "I had been in Boston for a long time, and they were struggling. General manager Hap Emms asked me if I would go to Detroit. It was near the trade deadline. Doug Barkley lost his eye that year and Sid Abel wanted me to go there. I said, sure, I'll go to Detroit. It was quite a feeling to go in there because they had guys like Gordie Howe and Alex Delvecchio that I had hit hard through the years. But they welcomed me with open arms. I really enjoyed playing there." That spring, Boen helped the Red Wings to the Stanley Cup final, where they lost to the Montreal Canadiens. After one more season with Detroit, Boeven's career was winding down, but age 35, he was given a chance to extend his career when the league doubled in size by adding 6 new franchises for the 1967-1968 campaign. Boen found a new home when he was selected by the Pittsburgh Penguins in 1967 NHL expansion draft. He recalled how after 16 years in the 6-team league, expansion added on to my career. At that time, there were a lot of players playing in the American Hockey League that were great players who just didn't get a chance. He spent a season and a half with the Penguins before moving on for a final time when he was traded to the Minnesota North Stars, another expansion club. After the North Stars were defeated in the quarterfinals of the 1970 playoffs, Boen retired.
Although Johnny Bower's nickname was the China Wall, it might better have been Perseverance, for although he had a Hall of Fame career in the NHL, it certainly didn't adhere to the traditional notion of what a life in professional hockey should be about. Bower grew up in rural Saskatchewan, the only boy in a family of 9 children. He was dirt poor and never had the proper equipment. He made his goalie pads from an old mattress, made pucks from horse manure. His dad would look for suitably crooked tree branches to shave into sticks, a friend gave him his first pair of skates because his father couldn't afford to buy him a pair, and yet he still refined his game to become one of the best goalies of all time. He began a career in the American Hockey League. Bauer played for Providence and Cleveland for 8 full seasons before playing a single NHL game. In 1953-54, he played the entire season for the New York Rangers, but then spent most of the next 4 seasons right back in the minors, having lost the starting job in New York to Gump Worsley. During his 14 years in the minors, he won the Les Cunningham Award as the AHL's best player 3 times and the Hap Holmes Award for top goaltender another 3 times. Bauer's big break came in the summer of 1958 when the Toronto Maple Leafs claimed him from Cleveland at the intra-league draft. Bauer was reluctant to join the Leafs, even though they had finished in last place the previous season, telling them he could be of no help to the team. It was only after being threatened with suspension that he showed up for training camp that fall, and within days, he had established himself as the team's number 1 goalie at age 34. He was to play a total of 12 seasons with the Leafs. Bauer, like his other 5 original 6 brethren, became famous for his fearless play. Maskless, he never shied away from an attacking player and in fact patented the most dangerous move a goalie can make, the poke check. Diving head first into the skates of an attacking player at full speed, Bauer would routinely flick the puck off that player's stick and out of harm's way. One time, he got a skate in his cheek, knocking a tooth out through his cheek. He suffered innumerable cuts to his mouth and lips and lost virtually every tooth in his mouth from sticks and pucks, but almost to his last game, he never wore a mask. And under the confident eye of coach Punch Imlach, Bauer got better and better. He led the Leafs into the playoffs his first season with a miracle comeback ending to the schedule, and then lost 2 finals in a row before winning 3 consecutive Stanley Cup championships, 1962 to 1964. At this time, Bauer's career seemed precarious. Imlach noticed that Bauer was having trouble with long shots and ordered his keeper to undergo an eye exam. Sure enough, he was short-sighted. But Bauer refused to retire and kept right on going, teaming with Terry Sawchuk to win the memorable 1967 Cup with Toronto's over-the-hill gang of players, led by the 43-year-old Bauer himself. After he retired in 1970 as the oldest goalie ever to play in the NHL, Bauer remained with the Leafs for many years as a scout and then goalie coach, putting the pads on and helping Leaf goalies in practice. At one injury-riddled time during the 1979-1980 season, he came within a whisker, at age 56, of dressing as the team's backup. A member of the Hockey Hall of Fame since 1976, Johnny Bauer's number 1 was retired by the Toronto Maple Leafs in 2017. Jerry "Cheesy" Cheevers, one of the first outspoken, aggressive goalies, served as the foundation for the offensively gifted Boston Bruins, who won the Stanley Cup in 1970 and 1972. There were exactly 6 goalies in the National Hockey League during the original 6 years, and he wasn't one of them, so it was an unlikely high point for a career that had started out poorly. Cheevers was raised in Toronto but was born in St. Catharines, Ontario. The Leafs were intrigued by him when he was a little child. To help him improve, they assigned him to the St. Michael's Majors of the Ontario Junior League. Although he occasionally played left wing with the Majors, he spent the majority of his 5 years there as a goalie. However, the Leafs had Johnny Bauer in net, so Cheevers couldn't move the China Wall out of the Leaf cage. Cheevers played 2 games with Toronto before being assigned to the farm team in Pittsburgh, where he failed to leave much of an impression. He didn't join Boston until 1965-1966, when the Bruins picked him up in the summer intra-league draft after Punch Imlach left him available. By 1968, he had become Boston's top player and the team's savior, joining the matchless Bobby Orr, Phil Esposito, and other legendary scorers. Cheevers was frequently left to his own devices to stop goals while all the others were in the offensive zone and putting the ball in the goal. The sole complaint, which followed him throughout his entire career, was that he wandered too much, sometimes with unfavorable results. In the 1968-1969 season, he started what would become his most recognizable trademark, drawing stitches on his mask to show where a puck had hit him. One day, when I was attempting to leave practice, a shot that couldn't have shattered an egg struck me in the face mask. I entered the changing room while pretending to be very hurt. I was enjoying a Coke there when Harry Sinden entered and motioned for me to return to the ice. I realized I had to act since all the guys were laughing. I instructed the trainer to paint the mask with a 30-stitch gash. Then I told Harry, "See how awful it is," and I went outside. His mask became a representation of the first generation of mask-wearing goalies who proved the efficacy of face protection throughout the subsequent years as he intermittently added more scars. Cheevers was one of many famous athletes that left the NHL and joined the fledgling World Hockey Association in the summer of 1972, shortly after winning the Stanley Cup. He expected it would be his final contract, but he signed a remarkable 7-year, $1.4 million deal with the Cleveland Crusaders. But after less than 4 years, he requested to be bought out and spent the majority of the following 4 seasons playing for the Bruins and in the NHL. Cheevers' dedication to the club contributed to his reputation as the best playoff goalie of all time. As long as his Bruins scored another goal, he didn't care how many goals he allowed. Trophies and shutouts were meaningless. Only the Stanley Cup was significant. His 53-34 career postseason record is one of the league's greatest ratios. One of the most talented and classiest stars ever to play in the NHL, Alex "Fats" Delvecchio spent more than 2 decades with the Detroit Red Wings. He was a superior playmaker and team leader and one of the game's true gentlemen. When he retired in 1973, he trailed only longtime teammate Gordie Howe in games played, assists and total points. His career extended from Detroit's glory years of the early 1950s to their dismal 1970s. As an amateur, Delvecchio starred in his hometown of Fort William in northwestern Ontario before heading south to play for the Oshawa Generals under the tutelage of former Red Wings great Larry Ory. In 1950-51, he led the OHA with 72 assists and had a 1-game trial with Detroit. After starting the 1951-52 schedule with the Indianapolis Capitals of the AHL, he joined the Red Wings for good and began by playing on the third line with Metro Priestley and Johnny Wilson. Delvecchio impressed as a rookie by helping Detroit win the Stanley Cup in 1952. In 1952-53, he replaced Sid Abel on the production line between Gordie Howe and Ted Lindsay and was named to the NHL's second All-Star team. The Powerhouse Wings won the Stanley Cup in 1954 and 1955. In the second of these 2 triumphs, Delvecchio starred with 7 goals and 8 assists. A serious ankle injury forced him to sit out 22 games in 1956-57, but over the balance of his career, he missed only 21 contests in becoming one of the most durable stars in hockey history. He was also a versatile forward, earning All-Star selection at both center and left wing, and followed Dit Clapper and Sid Abel as only the 3rd player in NHL history to be so honored at 2 positions. In 1959 he won his first of 3 Lady Byng trophies. Throughout the 1960s, he was a consistent 20-goal scorer and solid playoff performer. A popular player in the dressing room, Delvecchio was given the affectionate nickname, Fats, as a tribute to his round face. More important, the esteem in which his peers held him led to his choice as team captain in 1962, a position he held until he retired. In 1966 he helped the Red Wings reach the finals with a playoff-leading 11 assists. Delvecchio was presented the Lady Byng Trophy again in 1966 and 1969. Following the acquisition of Frank, Big M, Mahavlich from Toronto on March 3, 1968, Delvecchio enjoyed a short period where he formed a lethal forward line with the Big M and Gordie Howe. In 1968-69, the trio scored 118 goals to break the NHL standard set by the Habs punchline of Toe Blake, Elmer Latch and Maurice Richard in the 1940s. Their success didn't last long, however, as Mahavlich was traded to Montreal in January 1971. In the latter stages of his career, Delvecchio shared a host of milestones with longtime colleague Gordie Howe. On October 30, 1970, Fats stole the puck from Bruins phenomenon Bobby Orr to score his 400th goal. Later in the same game, Howe registered his 1,000th assist on Delvecchio's second goal of the night. Delvecchio also set up Mr. Hockey's 700th goal, while another Howe goal marked Delvecchio's 1,000th NHL point. By the early 1970s, the Red Wings were in decline and Delvecchio was among the oldest players in the league. He remained one of the club's few bright spots courtesy of his fluid skating style and quickness while handling or shooting the puck. In June 1970, Delvecchio's renamed hometown of Thunder Bay held a day in his honor that attracted 30,000 admirers. Early in the 1973-74 season, Delvecchio retired after spending parts of 24 seasons in the NHL. His career totals of 456 goals and 1,281 points carved him a permanent place in hockey history. Later that year, his service to one of the oldest U.S.-based franchises was acknowledged when he was awarded the Lester Patrick Trophy. Following teammate Gordie Howe, Delvecchio was only the second player in league history to play more than 20 seasons with the same team. His old line-mate tried to convince him to jump to Houston of the WHA, but Delvecchio decided to stay in the NHL. On retiring, Delvecchio remained in the Red Wings fold as head coach, a posting that took in parts of 4 seasons from 1973 to 1977. When he replaced harsh disciplinarian Ted Garvin in November 1973, Fats used the same savvy that served him as a player to win over his team. They started winning and thinking about the opposition instead of dreading their coach. Delvecchio handled the coaching duties for the entire 1974-75 campaign before stepping down in favor of Doug Barkley so he could focus on his duties as general manager. Barkley lasted only until November 1975, when Delvecchio stepped in on an interim basis before hiring Billy Dia on New Year's Eve. He moved back behind the bench on December 17, 1976, in yet another effort to improve the sad plight of the club. Alas, several years of poor drafting and questionable personnel moves put the Wings in such a hole that not even Delvecchio's experience and charm could improve the fortunes of the franchise or mollify the fans. The sting from his firing in 1976-77 subsided when he was elected to the Hockey Hall of Fame later that year. The classy Delvecchio also proved to be a success in the business world. He founded his own company, which manufactured and engraved signs for plaques and nameplates all over the United States. On November 10, 1991, the Red Wings paid tribute to one of their icons by raising his number 10 to the rafters of Joe Louis Arena. Born February 18, 1936, Terrence Richard "Dick" Duff was a hockey prodigy on the rinks in his hometown of Kirkland Lake, Ontario. By the age of 16, Duff took advantage of interest in his hockey prowess to advance his education, moving to Toronto to attend St. Michael's College. In 1953-54, his second year with St. Mike's, Dick led the majors in scoring with 35 goals and 75 points, adding 120 penalty minutes. During his third and final year of junior with St. Mike's Majors, Dick led the team in scoring once again with 53 points, but also made his NHL debut, joining the Toronto Maple Leafs on March 10, 1955 for the first of 3 games with the parent club. Later that season, the Majors beat the Regina Pats to collect the Memorial Cup for 1955. Dick led the Majors in scoring that season. In 1955-56, the 19-year-old Duff landed a full-time spot with the Toronto Maple Leafs, appearing in 69 games, scoring 18 goals and collecting 37 points with 74 minutes in penalties. Dick was one of the central figures as the Maple Leafs rebuilt the team through the late 50s, enjoying 3 consecutive seasons with 25 or more goals for Toronto between 1956-57 and 1959-60. The foundation of the franchise was built largely from players culled from the Leafs' 2 Ontario junior squads, the Toronto Marlboros and the St. Michael's Majors. Duff played a pivotal role in the Stanley Cup Championship won by the Toronto Maple Leafs in 1962, playing alongside fellow honored members George Armstrong, Johnny Bower, Tim Horton, Red Kelly, David Kean, Frank Mahavlich, Bert Olmsted, Bob Pulford and Alan Stanley. Although he missed more than a quarter of the regular season suffering from a broken ankle, Dick scored the Stanley Cup winning goal on April 22, 1962, as Toronto edged Chicago 2-1 to win their first Stanley Cup since Bill Barilko and his teammates celebrated in 1951. The Maple Leafs repeated their Stanley Cup celebration in 1963, with Dickie Duff setting an NHL record by scoring 2 goals in the first 108 of Game 1 of the final on April 9, 1963. The Leafs beat the Red Wings 4-2 in that contest. Duff was traded to the New York Rangers in a blockbuster deal on February 22, 1964 that saw Dick, Arnie Brown, Bill Collins, Bob Nevin and Rod Sealing move to Broadway, with Andy Bathgate and Don McKinney joining the Leafs. On December 22, 1964, Duff was traded to the Montreal Canadiens for Billy Hick. Having the chance to play for the Canadiens revitalized Duff's spirit and his play. With the Canadiens, Dick was part of 4 more Stanley Cup championships, winning Hockey's Most Treasured Prize in 1965, 1966, 1968 and 1969. Duff was sold to the Los Angeles Kings in January 1970, and by December that year, was sent with Eddie Shack to the expansion Buffalo Sabres in exchange for Mike McMahon. There, both Duff and Shack joined their old Leaf coach, Punch Imlach. The stop in Buffalo was brief, and Dick decided to hang up the Blades for good 8 games into the 1971-72 season. Through his productive career, Dick Duff collected 572 points, 283 goals and 289 assists, in 1,030 regular season NHL games. Through 114 playoff contests, Dick scored 30 goals and 49 assists. He played in 7 NHL All-Star games, as well, 1956, 1957, 1958, 1962, 1963, 1965 and 1967. Dick Duff returned to the Toronto Maple Leaf organization in 1979-80 season, and before his retirement, served as a scout, an assistant coach and in 1980-81, was one of 3 men to coach the Toronto Maple Leafs. Fernie Flaman was a Canadian ice hockey defenseman who left an indelible mark on the National Hockey League during his career. Born on January 25, 1927, in Dysart, Saskatchewan, Flaman's journey in hockey began in the minor leagues before making his mark in the NHL. Fernie Flaman played a total of 15 seasons in the NHL, representing the Boston Bruins, Toronto Maple Leafs, and New York Rangers. During his NHL career, he played in an impressive 910 regular season games, scoring 34 goals and providing 174 assists. While his offensive numbers may not stand out, Flaman's true value lay in his defensive prowess, leadership, and physicality on the ice. Fernie Flaman was a rugged and tenacious defenseman, feared by opponents for his hard-hitting style. Standing at 6 feet tall and weighing over 200 pounds, Flaman was an imposing figure on the ice. He earned a reputation as one of the toughest players in the league, always willing to stand up for his teammates and defend his territory. His leadership qualities were second to none. During his career, he served as the captain of both the Boston Bruins and Toronto Maple Leafs, leading by example and inspiring his teammates to give their all in every game. His leadership in the dressing room was equally valuable, guiding and mentoring younger players, contributing to their development and growth. Although Flaman's playing style was primarily focused on defense, his contributions did not go unnoticed. He was recognized for his outstanding abilities and was named to the NHL All-Star team on 3 occasions, in 1952, 1953, and 1955. Flaman's impact on the game and his longevity in the NHL earned him a well-deserved spot in the Hockey Hall of Fame. In 1990, he was inducted into the hallowed halls, cementing his legacy as one of the greatest defensemen to ever play the game. Fernie Flaman's legacy extends beyond his individual accomplishments and statistics. His relentless dedication to the game, his physicality, and leadership on and off the ice continue to inspire generations of hockey players. He demonstrated that a defenseman's role is not solely about scoring goals, but also about providing a strong defensive presence and protecting the team's net. Fernie Flaman was a true NHL legend, leaving an unforgettable mark on the game of hockey. His physicality, leadership, and defensive skills made him a force to be reckoned with. His contributions to the sport were recognized with his induction into the Hockey Hall of Fame, solidifying his status as one of the game's all-time greats. Fernie Flaman's legacy will undoubtedly endure, inspiring future generations of hockey players to embrace the essence of what it means to be a true team player and leader in the world of ice hockey. Billgadsby, a stalwart of defense in the National Hockey League, is a name etched in the annals of the sport. Billgadsby was born on August 8, 1927, in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. He made his NHL debut with the Chicago Blackhawks in the 1946-47 season. His steady presence on the blue line quickly earned him recognition. Gadsby played for multiple NHL teams during his career, including the Chicago Blackhawks, New York Rangers, and Detroit Red Wings. These impressive statistics underscore Gadsby's prowess as both a defensive stalwart and a contributor to his team's offense. Billgadsby was selected to play in the NHL All-Star Game 8 times during his career. His consistent excellence on the ice earned him the respect and admiration of fans and fellow players alike. In 1970, Billgadsby was deservedly inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame in Toronto, Canada. His exceptional career and contributions to the sport were recognized by the highest honor in hockey. Gadsby was not only known for his impressive stats but also for his leadership and tenacity. He was often the captain of his teams and set an example with his unwavering commitment to the game and his teammates. Billgadsby's legacy in the NHL extends far beyond the numbers. His dedication to the sport, his ability to shut down opposing offenses, and his leadership qualities make him a revered figure in the history of hockey. His contributions continue to inspire the next generation of defensemen. Billgadsby's impressive statistics, All-Star selections, Hall of Fame induction, and leadership qualities make him an enduring symbol of excellence in the world of hockey. Gadsby's impact on the NHL will forever be remembered, and he remains an inspiration to aspiring hockey players. His stats are: games played, 1,248 goals, 130 assists, 438 points, 568 penalty minutes, 1,539 eight-time NHL All-Star inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame in 1970. Billgadsby's impact on the NHL is undeniable, and his contributions to the sport will be celebrated for generations to come. Fernie Boom Boom Geoffrion is a name that resonates with hockey fans across the globe. Born on February 14, 1931, in Montreal, Quebec, Canada, Fernie Geoffrion would go on to become one of the greatest players in NHL history. Fernie Geoffrion's hockey journey began in his hometown of Montreal. He quickly rose through the ranks and joined the Montreal Canadiens in 1950. His early years in the NHL were marked by his incredible slapshot, a shot so powerful that it earned him the nickname, Boom Boom. Geoffrion's career with the Montreal Canadiens was nothing short of spectacular. He played for the Canadiens from 1950 to 1964 and was an integral part of their success during that period. His scoring prowess and leadership on the ice made him a beloved figure in Montreal. Geoffrion scored a total of 393 regular season goals during his NHL career. His ability to find the back of the net consistently made him one of the most feared snipers of his era. He tallied 822 points in the regular season, showcasing not only his scoring ability but also his playmaking skills. He was a complete offensive force. Geoffrion was part of the Montreal Canadiens dynasty in the 1950s, winning a total of 6 Stanley Cup championships during his career. He led the league in scoring and was awarded the Art Ross Trophy in the 1954-1955 season, further cementing his status as an offensive juggernaut. Fernie Geoffrion was selected to the NHL All-Star team on 11 occasions, reflecting his consistent excellence and impact on the game. Beyond his impressive statistics, Fernie Geoffrion was known for pioneering the slapshot, a technique that has become a fundamental part of modern hockey. His powerful slapshot revolutionized the game, and he was instrumental in popularizing this skill among players. Fernie Geoffrion's impact on the NHL extends far beyond his statistics. He was a trailblazer who left an indelible mark on the sport. His combination of skill, leadership, and innovation made him one of the most iconic players in the history of the game. After retiring as a player, Geoffrion continued to contribute to hockey as a coach and executive. His dedication to the sport and his desire to pass on his knowledge to future generations solidified his status as a true hockey legend. His legacy lives on in the hearts of hockey fans and in the slapshots of countless players who continue to be inspired by his groundbreaking technique. Fernie Boom Boom Geoffrion's impact on the NHL cannot be overstated. His remarkable career, marked by impressive statistics and innovations, makes him a true legend in the world of ice hockey. From his early days in Montreal to his lasting legacy, Fernie Geoffrion's name will forever be associated with excellence, innovation, and the love of the game.
Gilbert, a legendary figure in the National Hockey League, is widely regarded as one of the greatest right-wingers in the history of the sport. His exceptional career, marked by incredible achievements and a charismatic personality. Gilbert was born on July 1, 1941, in Montreal, Quebec, Canada. He began his professional hockey career in the minor leagues before being called up to the NHL by the New York Rangers. Gilbert made his NHL debut with the New York Rangers on December 9, 1960, and would go on to become one of the franchise's most iconic players. His style of play and scoring ability quickly earned him recognition as one of the league's top forwards. Gilbert was celebrated for his incredible speed, agility, and puck handling skills. He was known for his versatility as a forward, excelling both as a scorer and a playmaker. Gilbert was particularly adept at setting up his teammates for goals, and he had an knack for being in the right place at the right time. Gilbert's career statistics are nothing short of outstanding. He scored 406 goals and tallied 615 assists, for a total of 1,021 points in 1,065 regular season games. He was a 9-time NHL All-Star, 1962, 1964 to 1965, 1967 to 1972, and was a key player for the Rangers during the 1960s and 1970s. He was also a 3-time Lady B Memorial Trophy winner for his sportsmanship and gentlemanly conduct. Rod Gilbert's impact on the NHL is immeasurable. His remarkable scoring ability, records, and leadership on and off the ice have solidified his place in the Hockey Hall of Fame. Gilbert was known for his charismatic and friendly personality, making him a beloved figure not only among Rangers fans but throughout the hockey world. He was actively involved in various charitable efforts and community initiatives. After retiring from professional hockey, Gilbert remained active in the sport as an ambassador and representative of the New York Rangers. He continued to be a prominent figure in the hockey community, participating in various events and charity activities. Rod Gilbert's legendary career as a versatile and charismatic right-winger in the NHL left an enduring mark on the league. His remarkable statistics, leadership, and dedication to the game earned him a rightful place in the Hockey Hall of Fame. Rod Gilbert's legacy endures as one of the greatest players to ever grace the ice, and his impact extends beyond the rink, touching the lives of many through his philanthropic efforts and engaging personality.